Okay. Welcome everyone to the fourth technical session of the day. With us, Sergii Ivashchenko from Adobe. He is working as a software engineer, and today he will going to share a PHP 8 and its compatibility with Magento. So let's welcome Sergii and start the session. So I'm handing over to the Sergii.
Hi everyone, thanks for the introduction, great. So yeah, my name is Sergii Ivashchenko, and I'm from Magento Community Engineering team. Our team is working with open source Magento repositories and helping Magento developers to contribute to them. And recently we have launched a new community project that is PHP 8 compatibility project for Magento. And in this presentation, I'm going to share our plans and also share some experience that we have already got during the work with this project. So first, I would like to go quickly through the PHP releases and support, just to outline how important it is to keep an eye on PHP upgrades and keep an eye on your environments and stick to the latest PHP versions. So PHP is released every year, and once the new version is released, it has only 2 years of active support, and on top of that, 1 additional year of security-only support. That means that PHP 7.3 is reaching its end of life in just 9 months, and PHP 7.4 will reach end of active support in 9 months, and there will be 1 more year of security support only. And this autumn, we will already have PHP 8.1 in addition to PHP 8.0 we are now working on compatibility with. So PHP new version always bringing a lot of new features to us, and considering that PHP 8 is a major upgrade, there are lots of cool stuff. In this presentation, I will not focus on specific features of PHP 8, rather on the approaches to the migration, but I would like to share with you the results of the survey that I recently published for the Magento community, and get some information on what new features from PHP 8 are interesting for Magento community, what they would like to see in Magento code, used in Magento code. So the union types have the most preference. Well, I guess that brings a lot of flexibility, maybe easier upgrade to strict types as well. GIT is definitely a cool feature, just-in-time compilation. Each PHP new version usually brings some slight optimization, some slight performance optimization, and with PHP 8, GIT is an optional a configuration that has a really high potential for speeding up the stores. Null safe operator is a convenient feature. Attributes is something really cool that I think can inspire a lot of ideas and can bring a lot of new things to the coding. So definitely I recommend you to check out the attributes feature and play with it. And constructor property promotion, yeah, I would agree that's a nice cool feature that can save us some typing, save number of lines in the classes. However, so delivering new features do have some side effects, and those side effects are backward incompatible changes. And there are a number of those in PHP, starting as low level changes as string to number comparison, and going further, there were lots of exceptions changes, and so on. So backward incompatible changes is something that we are actually focusing on during the migration process, during the adding the PHP 8 compatibility. So now go into plans of migration to PHP 8 approaches. While I will be sharing experience of Magento 2 project, I believe these approaches can be used by any project and actually during any upgrade to the new PHP version, not specifically PHP 8. So considering that each project is not running in isolation, there are some dependencies, there are other packages we depend on, the upgrade cannot be done at once, like just decomposed and executed in parallel. There can be, well, at least 2 stages to the upgrade process. On the first stage, all the dependencies of the project has to be updated to PHP 8 compatible version. And while the dependencies are not updated, the project cannot be installed on the new PHP version. And that means it can be tested only using static analysis. So basically this upgrade is driven by static analysis, static tests. And using these static tests, we can start the update of the code base in the first stage. However, we'll need until all the dependencies are updated, until we can install the project on our infrastructure and run all the tests, check the project in the runtime, and start working on the extensions. So as you know, Magento has not just the core, but lots of extensions that needs to be upgraded as well. And other extensions will be able to finalize their update to PHP 8 once the main project is updated, as main project is a dependency. Looking into Magento 2 core, for example, there are 67 dependencies in the composer JSON, and out of them currently 32 of them are compatible with PHP 8. 23 needs to be updated now. That's something that we are working at the moment on PHP 8 compatibility project. And what's interesting, considering that PHP 8 was released almost 3 months ago, there are still 12 dependencies that do not yet have the PHP 8 compatible version released. So they are delaying the update as well. The challenges that we faced during dependencies update. First of all, that's backward incompatibility, and when we are talking about dependencies, this backward incompatibility is doubled because the first part comes from PHP 8 backward incompatible changes itself, and second part is additional changes that the projects we depend on bring with the new versions. So that's double backward incompatibility that needs to be addressed. Also, dependencies can have limited PHP versions compatibility. And considering that we would like to support some specific PHP versions, for 2.4 that's 7.3 and 7.4, and if we are adding PHP 8 on top, that's three versions, and not all the PHP 8 compatible packages keep compatibility with 3 different PHP versions, and that means that with some of them we need to ensure Magento can work, or our project can work with several different dependency versions. As I mentioned, we cannot test our changes, we cannot test our adjustments to new dependencies on the new PHP version until all of the dependencies are updated. This cannot test in the runtime. One big challenge is the cross-dependency. So while our project has some dependencies, our dependencies also depend on other packages, and sometimes on the same packages we depend on. And that brings challenges to the task decomposition. First of all, it becomes harder to update dependencies one by one. It introduces some sequence, so we cannot start on specific updates. until specific dependency updates until others are pending, and also combined with limited compatibility. It may be a big challenge, like limited compatibility of these cross-dependent projects between each other and PHP versions as well. Well, if you have composer lock in your repository, the working on dependencies updates always bringing conflicts, a lot of conflicts to composer lock. However, for large projects with lots of dependencies, probably it's still better to keep composer lock in place in the repository during the development to avoid some issues that may sometimes happen, may sometimes be brought by patch updates of some of the dependencies, and not to spend time on tracing them and figuring out while you are working on the target dependencies. And finally, as you can see from the diagram on previous slides, there can be some stale projects. Well, these 12 projects that I showed probably are not stale, but they're still working on their PHP compatible version, but sometimes it happens. Technology is evolving fast. New projects are emerging, and old projects sometimes became abandoned. So there might be a case if your dependency will not release the new PHP compatible version. In this case, you'll need to either help out with this project if it's open source, and or look for more active alternatives, or just eliminate the dependency. As for tips, before starting the investigation of dependency upgrade, it's always a good thing to look at the dependency migration guide. I found out that a lot of packages do publish that migration guide, describing all the backward incompatible changes and how to address them. For example, Laminas has really good migration guides for their packages, and especially for major versions, that's usually available for dependencies, can save you a lot of time. One cool feature of GitHub is GitHub dependency graph. It's enabled by default for open source project. Probably it should be enabled in settings for private projects on the GitHub. Displays a nice view of all the dependencies for your project in GitHub. Check out this feature, and yeah, you can generate local the dependency tree locally with composer depends tree command for all project or just for specific packages. That can help with the cross dependency. Also, a couple of additional tips. Sometimes when you are waiting for PHP compatible version of the project, it makes sense to watch their repository, find the issue that that is addressing PHP 8 compatibility, or create one if it's not present there. And finally, it makes sense to minimize the dependencies of your project. By saying this, I not mean just implement everything in-house, but just take a look if you really need the new dependency when you are onboarding it. As for code base, so PHP upgrades are really based on testing. That's not exactly test-driven development, but still testing is a really helpful thing for ensuring the upgrade waits smoothly and everything is fine. For code base, while the project cannot be installed on PHP 8, it still can. The code base still can be updated using the static analysis, static testing. Once all the dependencies are updated, we can run the whole test suite and stabilize the project there. And once the project is ready and stable, and the infrastructure is ready, then full CI/CD and integration with other projects can be assessed. The challenges here are static tests availability. The static test is also a project, and it also requires to be updated for the new PHP version. For example, Magento views PHP compatibility is a very nice tool, but currently there is no stable version released for PHP 8 check-in, but there is an active work going on in the develop branch. So we are using the develop branch of PHP compatibility right now to get some results and help us out. And yes, the code base can be fully tested until dependencies are updated. As for tips, PHP migration guide is just awesome. As for dependencies, is check out the dependencies migration guide, PHP migration guide. Hopefully, we'll be able to prepare some migration guide at the end of the PHP 8 compatibility projects for Magento as well. As I said, even if there is no stable version for the tests, you can still use development version, and it will cover part of the changes that you need to do. And finally, everybody is updating to new PHP versions. So community is facing and resolving similar problems, and staying with community can actually bring you a lot of information and save your time. Also, if you are facing challenges and resolving some problems, I think it would be really good to share that with community as well in return for that. So now closer look on PHP 8 compatibility project. All the work is going on in PHP 8 develop branch that was created from 2.4 develop. As 2.4 develop supports PHP 7, is compatible with PHP 7, 7.3, 7.4. We are keeping these PHP versions and are working on adding PHP 8.0 while staying compatible with 7.3, 7.4 right now. The project documentation, the main project page can be found on Magento 2 repository wiki. It's easy to find it on the right sidebar, where there is a link for all project documentations. And on this wiki page, there is not just the project information, but also I'm adding all the dependency versions that we updated on PHP 8 develop branch, and as well all the backward incompatible changes that were introduced in scope of the project for you to get prepared. Finally, we have already published 2 blog posts on Magento dev blog, and going to do the updates for PHP 8 compatibility as well as other Magento projects frequently. So check out, stay tuned to Magento dev blog. If you have not visited it yet, it's easy to Google just Magento dev blog and you will find it. Lots of useful information there, and yeah, as I said, our plans is to publish it frequently. As for other Magento projects, the backlog for PHP 8 compatibility project is available on Magento 2 repository, projects tab, PHP 8 compatibility backlog for issues, PHP 8 compatibility PRs for pull request. Here you can track the progress and see what we are working on, and maybe even participate in that project. As you can see from the screenshot here, the work is going on. And I would like to shout out to all the contributors that joined the project from the very early beginnings and already done a lot of cool work. Really thanks to every contributor participating in the project. And also thanks to the contribution partners. There's no contribution partners, participants of contribution partner program are our solution partners who have access to private repositories and some additional rewards. If you'd like to join the program, you can send community engineering team an email. And finally, I would like you to share your vision on PHP 8, because PHP 8 compatibility is just the beginning, and at some point we'll need to go for PHP 8 support. And we would like to hear your opinion about what PHP 8 features would you like to see in Magento. Maybe you have some cool ideas about implementations around this, around the new PHP features. I guess that's all from as for presentation. Please do participate at the survey. I'm very curious about your answers. And now let's see which questions do you have, guys. How do we intend to introduce constructor promotion? A question from Simon Frost. So that's a hard question. I guess constructor promotion can, as soon as PHP 8 support will be available, constructor promotion can be introduced for new classes or changed classes. That's quite simple feature from my point of view, and one of those features that are not too backward incompatible. Simon, if you have a more specific question, just reach out to me directly. We can discuss this. The next question: which Magento version will have PHP 8 compatibility and any release plan? So we would like to introduce PHP 8 compatibility as soon as possible. However, there are still discussions going on because we would like to keep our releases as backward and as compatible as possible as well. And there is a compromises to be discussed. And you can check out the Magento release plan page on the dev docs, available on the dev docs. And I believe that once we will have the final decision ready, we'll publish it to the dev blog. So stay tuned to the dev blog. Probably it will be, there might be some announcements soon. Adding PHP 8 compatibility will force to remove any compatibility of old PHP version. Well, not exactly. PHP 8 compatibility is meaning that the project will be able to run on PHP, but it's not the PHP support. So we will not be able to use PHP support on the PHP compatibility stage. The first step is PHP 8 compatibility, and the second step is PHP 8 support to use the new features. And yes, when we will release a Magento version that has PHP 8 support, we will need to drop all previous versions to be able to use the new features, all previous versions of PHP. That will be the second step after the compatibility will be ready. Okay, the next question from Haparik. All these issues fixes and testing will be done on Magento 2.4x or for both 2.3 and we are working on 2.4. 2.4. So I'm not sure about 2.3. It will depend on the. It will depend on the release plan. There is a possibility that PHP 8 compatibility will go to 2.3, but I don't know, to be honest, yet. Tom Cook asked, is there any separate project costed for managing PHP 8 compatibility and its PRs? What will be the milestones? Yes, there is, as I showed you before, there is a separate project with its own documentation, with its own dashboards on Magento 2 repository. Each project in Magento has PHP 8 develop branch, not just the core where the work is going on. And the milestones right now, the first milestone is to update dependencies and start updating code base based on static tests. And later on, just stabilize the project and have the PHP 8 compatible version. There are no milestones defined in GitHub right now. Another question, when do you expect Magento to give back an int and only int instead of varchar? I don't know.
Yeah, it is very technical. Maybe developer can only answer, but Thank you, Sergey. That's all for the question and answer round. Now I think all the attendees now can like imagine like when the Magento 2 is fully compatible with PHP 8. So thank you for sharing your thoughts, and thank you for have you in this event.
Thank you everybody who attended. It was very nice to participate at the event. Actually, I have a really warm feelings and a really nostalgic feelings because Meet Magento last year was probably my last trip, and the last live conference, definitely like physical conference, definitely that I attended, and it's really nice to be here this year as well.
Okay,
Okay,
then bye for now, and let's hope to see you in the next year.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you still have questions, guys, and see you around. Bye bye.
Yeah, bye.